Peace everyone, Unmasked Art here, and today I'll be talking you through the process of coloring a betta fish. But first, don't forget to subscribe for more tutorials just like this. This drawing here was live streamed over on my Patreon. I do live streams every Tuesday and Thursday, so if you'd like to join in on the live tutorial sessions, I will have a link for that in the video description. Before I get too far into the drawing, let me tell you what supplies I'm using. The paper I'm drawing on is Strathmore toned gray paper. This is quickly becoming one of my all-time favorite papers to work on. It has a nice, sturdy, smooth surface that allows colors to show up wonderfully vibrant. So if you are a fan of smooth paper like myself, I can definitely recommend it. Now for the pencils I used to color this project, I used only Prismacolor. When I do my live tutorials on Patreon, I always try to use the most accessible supplies so you don't have to be rich to follow along. As for the solvent I use to blend my pencils, I use Zest It. Now, the last bit of supplies I use won't come into play until the very end of the project, and that is the brush and pencil titanium white and touch-up texture. I use this product to add the final highlights to the project, and in the live streams I walk you through the entire process step by step. Alright, so let's get on to the actual process of the drawing, shall we? My first step, and the first of most, is to get an accurate line art down on the paper. You can see some of my line work. One key feature is that it is very light, and I often make it lighter using a kneaded eraser. Making sure the lines are faint prevents the graphite from muddying your colors. So my plan for actually starting the fish was to divide the parts of the fish and focus on one at a time. I use this approach a lot. It helps sometimes when working on complex subjects. It allows you to make small goals, making it feel like even after a short time you've completed something. In contrast, if you were to work the entire subject, you would have to spend a significant amount of time filling everything in just to feel like you've done anything. Doing things this way can help you stay motivated throughout the project. With that in mind, I focus on the body of the fish. I take my time mapping out the proportions of the scales using a light color, knowing I'll be covering it later. Once I get the details mapped out, the only other thing to do really is to begin adding in my additional colors. This part is actually far easier than you might initially imagine, because the color diversity is so random in our betta fish. Color accuracy is far less important. Because of this feature, you can pretty much apply your colors semi-random. The only real important feature that you must keep in mind is value. Establishing dynamic values is going to give your fish the three-dimensional quality it needs to stand off the paper. As I move on to the other parts of the fish, I continue to utilize the same ideas I've discussed up to this point. However, the one changing feature is texture. The scales are replaced by a smoother surface that has more articulated anatomy. For this reason, I apply my colors with more purpose. I start with the highlights and shadow shapes to lock in the structure of the subject. Whenever I apply this method of placing the shadows or highlights, I often refer to it as the bridge method. If you can establish both sides of the bridge, it makes it easier to fill in the space between. sort of like a map that shows you where you are and where you need to go. Regardless of the landscape in between these 2 points, practice and experience will give you the skills you need to adapt and overcome any terrain you come across. For the project here, it's pretty straightforward, and once again, because this particular fish comes in a boundless array of colors, color accuracy is fairly irrelevant. The next aspect of the project addresses the majority of the drawing, that being the tail fin. Probably the most important feature of the drawing, it is the most difficult part. Now, it's not difficult because it uses some hidden technique or requires skills beyond what was used in the previous sections. It's most difficult because it has flow. Flow is a term I use to describe movement. Just like the tail here, hair in portraits have flow, long clothes like dresses or even window curtains have what I call flow. Flow is one of the most difficult qualities to replicate. I have a hard time just trying to find the words to express the approach. However, there is a way to make it through such a difficult characteristic as flow. Similar to how I mapped out the scales on the fish in the very beginning, you can also use the same idea to map out the flow of a subject. Adding in the extra step of outlining the structure of the flow will significantly improve the quality of movement in your subject. And this is exactly what I do for the tail here. I use safe colors that will easily be covered to create a map of direction throughout the tail, much like a vector field for my fellow calculus enthusiasts. Once you have your map sketched in, just fill in your colors using the map to guide your lines seamlessly into the smooth curve. Once you have all of this filled in, you can move on to the next important quality, which is, of course, value. Getting a nice contrast between all the blues and purple is what makes the colors really come to life. And when it comes time to blend areas like this that have an obvious directionality to them, you want to blend them using the same strict flow direction you applied with your pencils. Doing this will add even more assurance everything is moving in the right direction. All of this goes without saying that through the entire project it is important to apply ample layers of your pencils, regardless of whether or not the paper is white, gray, or any variant among them. A lack of pigment will result in desaturated colors. So by the end, if you find yourself asking how the colors are so vibrant, it's not magic, it's just plenty of layers. One of the other things I haven't really talked about up to this point is pencil pressure. For those of you that have spent time learning with me, I have no doubt you know my infamous phrase when it comes to pencil pressure, so say it with me. Never press harder than what is necessary for the color to show up. Art should not be painful. I've sat for hours upon hours coloring with pencils, and my hand has never hurt, my wrist has never hurt. The simple truth is that it just takes a bit of patience and time to get the full coverage most seek with their colored pencil work. And it is that coverage that makes the colors rich and vibrant. Now it's time for the last details. When this project was coming to an end, I decided to add a few bubbles to it, just to give it a little atmosphere. This is where the brush and pencil products come in. After I use a circle stencil to put in the placement of my bubbles, I use the same colors that I use in the Betta fish to add some reflection and shadows. Once I have the bubbles all laid out with the pencils, I use the titanium white and touch-up texture to create a colored pencil paint. on a piece of tape you see off to the side there. Then I just use a small detail brush to put in the final highlights throughout the picture. Alright everyone, here is the finished drawing. I hope you enjoyed this project and learned something along the way. Please give it a thumbs up and a share for me. Leave a comment or a question below, and if you want to learn even more from me, you can do that by joining my Patreon, where I do live tutorials every Tuesday and Thursday. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more tutorials just like this, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.